Hello, LinkedIn Live audience, and welcome to this month's live panel debate. And a very happy Pride Day to you all. I'll be your host, Claire Muscat, and I'm the very proud founder of Women in CX, the world's first online membership community for women in customer experience. Before I introduce today's topic and my esteemed guest, I'd love to know two things in the chat. First of all, where in the world are you joining us from today? And secondly, where is you or your company most focused at the moment? Are you focusing on CX improvement or innovation? Let us know in the chat. Feel free to get involved and we can get the conversation started. But while we're waiting for a few more people to join, in the background, I've got my amazing team supporting the live stream. Meg's here with me coordinating the chat in the backstage, and Sips is supporting you in the chat as well. So feel free to say hi, Sips. And just to tell you a little bit more about who we are and what we do, for anyone who's not familiar with Women in CX, or WIX as we're known, we started out as a podcast during the pandemic in 2020 as a platform for women to share their career stories, experiences and ideas about customer experience, and became a startup community on International Women's Day 2021. We co-designed the community together with our founding members, our mission being to unite women across the globe to collaborate, inspire and support one another on the path to CX mastery. And now, just over a year on, our community spans over 50 countries, with access to a private social media network, networking events, guest webinars, member-led masterclasses and case studies, plus a whole resource library of exclusive content to help our members flourish both personally and professionally. We even offer a social pricing model and free scholarship places to women who are out of work to ensure all social and economic barriers to taking part are removed in the spirit of true equality. We're also on a mission to amplify the voices of women in our industry, hence taking what was previously a roundtable discussion inside the community live to you, our audience here on LinkedIn today. And just as a reminder of what we're discussing, today's panel debate is winning approaches for effective CX improvement and innovation. But before we start, let's see who's here and whose companies are more focused on innovation or improvement. So just checking out the comments here. Who have we got? Oh, we've got David in Belfast, Monica in Barcelona, Ranjit in India. Got saying that's in Istanbul, Ipsa in India. Yeah, so let us know. Are you or your company more focused on innovation or improvement at the moment when it comes to CX? Oh, we've got Christy in Dubai, Adri. Oh, she's usually in Barcelona, in Palencia, Spain. Monica as well. Welcome, everybody. Oh, we've got Zane in Riga as well. Lovely to see you all. So, yeah, let us know in the chat. Are you more focused on improvement or innovation? And we'll come back to that in a second. So should we get started? Well, today we're going to be talking about, as I said, improvement and innovation. And when it comes to creating value alongside product and service, customer experience is one of the levers that can be pulled to increase consumer value perception. It's long been established that people are willing to pay more for a product or service if it comes with better CX, but to what extent? And how exactly do you go about identifying what to improve or indeed where to innovate? Undoubtedly, research, data, and insight have a crucial role to play in understanding what customers want and need. But what if you uncover problems upstream that aren't related to customer experience at all? By investing in CX improvement and innovation, could you be in fact investing in changes that will have little material impact on the top and bottom line? In today's increasingly complex, digitally enabled operating environment, treating CX as a silo to be treated independently from the proposition can result in unintended consequences, including projects being piloted by CX teams being judged to have failed. So the biggest question to answer is how to approach customer experience and innovation effectively as a vehicle to deliver holistic business value. So I'm about to be joined by a panel of expert guests from the Women in CX community as they discuss the challenges faced by CX leaders who are striving for better customer and employee experiences. We're here to debate the merits of different approaches to CX improvement and innovation and provide practical tips and advice on how to win in this space. So I'm just going to have another look in the chat, see what else we're seeing here. So let's have a look. Oh, yeah. So Mindy Zayas is focused on improvement. Oh, yeah, I've got a few more people arriving already, but tell us, where are you more focused, improvement or innovation? And we'll come back to that chat shortly. So, okay, we'd love you to get involved, audience, by commenting in the chat, asking questions. And in our final 15 minutes, we've dedicated that time for you to ask questions directly to the panel yourselves too. So without further ado, please welcome on stage our CX queens, Ellie Sutton from Waitrose and Partners, Alex Acosta from Dick's Sporting Goods, Olga Potapseva from the European Customer Consultancy, and hopefully Adi Tobias from Uber. Yay! Adi's experiencing load shedding in South Africa at the moment. I think we've got a few people joining in the chat from South Africa today, so you can feel her pain, no doubt. So welcome, ladies. How are you doing today?
Hello.
Hey.
Good, thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, I'm super excited for this conversation. So ladies, let's kick off with some intros. Can you share a little bit more about who you are, where you're based, and how you're connected with this subject of CX improvement innovation? So I'm going to go around as I see the screen. So Ellie, go for it. You first.
Hi everyone, I'm Ellie and I work for Waitrose and Partners, who are a UK-based supermarket. We are based in Bracknell, which is kind of just outside of Reading, and we very much kind of pride ourselves with being at the sort of in terms of quality and ethics and value at the top of the supermarket kind of chain of in the UK, which is good.
Yeah, awesome. And how are you connected with?
So yeah, I should probably introduce what I do there. So I am one of the senior customer experience managers in the business, and I'm specifically looking after proposition design and how do we draw in our customers and keep them shopping with us. And there's a huge amount of competition obviously within the supermarket sector, so how do we maintain loyalty and keep that as an industry really interesting.
Yeah, awesome. I'm so glad to have you with us. And if anyone who's not checked out our latest podcast episode, we've got Ellie and I specifically geeking out on supermarket customer experience and proposition. So feel free to take a look on whichever platform you like to listen or watch on. Next up, Alex, tell us a bit more about you and your connection to this subject.
Sure. Hi, I'm Alex Acosta. I am a CX analyst at Dick's Sporting Goods. And basically my job is to inform the organization about how we might improve or innovate CX with data. So a lot of analyzing survey data, matching it up with other data sources, and really, trying to cultivate that improvement and innovation through what we learn from our customers.
Amazing. And I've just got to say a quick hello to Libertad in Peru. I'm going to be heading out there first week of August. If you fancy a hangout, I don't know if you're in Lima at all. Be amazing to meet you. Just spotted that country. So yeah, next, Olga, tell us a bit more about you and your connection to the subject.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. My name is Olga Potapseva. I'm a founding director for the European Customer Consultancy, and we work with mostly large enterprises and governments in CX implementation. So that is my connection. I am the inventor of the CX implementation toolkit that specifically focuses on making CX operational and useful to businesses. And I'm one of the founding members for Women in CX, which makes me immensely proud. And I also am quite passionate about promoting standards in customer centricity, and do that as an executive director for the Customer Institute.
Amazing. Thank you, Olga. And thank you for being one of our founding members. Couldn't have got here without you. And Adi, hoping that the Wi-Fi holds for you. Tell us more about you.
Cool. Yeah, you're hoping as much as I am. Hello, everyone. So I am Adi. I'm based in Johannesburg, if you haven't guessed. I lead CX for Sub-Saharan Africa for Uber. And in our case, Sub-Saharan Africa consists of 7 countries within East, West, and then South Africa. So my connection to this topic is that, our product was invented to just solve a customer problem, really. So it's intrinsic to our business. We are obsessed truly with delivering intuitive and quick services. And so because of the context that I work in, it's inevitable that it's part of my everyday life. We strive to, I think improvement is a big part of what we do, only because of, who we are. But also in my personal capacity, I'm the worst customer. I will easily say that. So because I like things a certain way, and I think that things should be done, excellently, I'm often very critical, and therefore can hopefully anticipate what customers need.
I love that. And yeah, I am also a terrible customer. I think it comes with the territory, doesn't it, being in CX? So we've got an incredible panel today comprising the UK, USA, Europe and Africa, supermarkets, non-food retail, platform-based businesses and consulting, and expertise from data, tech, operations and research. So to start us off, I'm sure the audience would love to know a little bit more about customer experience in your industry. Specifically, what is the difference between improvement and innovation where you are? What the main challenges have been for your sector and business, and how that's overall affected your approach? So Ellie, I'm going to start with you with supermarkets and propositions.
Yeah, so I think I define the difference between improvement and innovation as being kind of the improvements are the kind of tangible pieces of insight that we can get from our customers that they're telling us we need to do better on, and kind of what in their daily experience or weekly experience with us that we can improve to make that kind of their life easier. I think the innovation piece is then the one that the bit that customers aren't telling us what they need yet, and kind of really using our the tools that we have within customer experience to provide them with using service design toolkits to look at what they might need tomorrow. I think a really good example of that in my world has been something where we sort of developed a food service counter probably now about 5 years ago, where we put sushi counters into our supermarket operations. Nobody at that point was using our feedback mechanisms to say, oh God, my supermarket experience would be so much nicer if you put a sushi counter in. But hey presto, it's like one of the most profitable things that we've done, and totally has fulfilled a customer need that they didn't know they had. So for me, that's the kind of world that I'm working in from a proposition perspective, trying to fulfill that gap in an innovation space. And I think in terms of why is it important is because for the supermarket industry is so competitive. You as a brand have to really know where your place is within the marketplace, and what customers are wanting from your brand and how to be authentic in that space. So is that you're a supermarket that is primarily looking at value and price, and therefore you're making improvements and innovation in that space. But equally, if you're and in my world in Waitrose that's looking at kind of quality and service, kind of what's the area within that space that we can innovate and improve on?
Awesome answer. And highly competitive environment. I guess also from the cost of labor perspective, there's a lot of innovation that's going to have to come at a significantly lower cost, right, in the future as well, especially in the UK, as we're about to head into a really difficult, challenging time for consumers as well. So Adi, I'd love to know kind of from your point of view, platform-based business and tech, same questions. What's the difference between improvement and innovation?
Look, I think, as mentioned before, our business was birthed out of solving a customer problem, right? And that required innovative thinking to try and fix what no one even thought was a real problem. So I think for us, innovation is part and parcel of our day-to-day, and is seen as our BAU. So in order for us to develop and better the platform, we have to leverage data. We have to look at kind of behavioral science and make sure that we're coupling that with the inputs that we receive from our customers. So for us, what may be deemed innovative in another context is something that we do every single day. I think another part of that, because it's so intrinsic, is that there's a close alignment between improvement and innovation. And for us, it is reducing those points of friction in the customer journey, right? So it could be an innovation opportunity and it could be an improvement opportunity. So for us, I would probably see it being 50-50, and the aim is always to solve a customer problem, a point of friction, or potentially delight someone with something that they didn't even anticipate. And I'm happy to quote an example. I'm not sure how much time I have left, but we were able to deliver quite a, some would call it innovative, but I would say it was just kind of solving or meeting a human need. We developed a product called Uber Connect. If any of you have ever used it, the convenience thereof. So during the pandemic, when nobody could speak to anyone, you couldn't get in touch with your family, you couldn't share meals, there was no contact at all. And lots of people felt super frustrated because there's community and connection, right? And so we had to think, how do we assist our customer base and just customers in general to connect with their families? And what we did was, we've got cars, we've got drivers, let's develop a product that allows people to either send food or a gift or a parcel to their friends and family via the app, no contact. And it took off so amazingly that it's now part and parcel of our product suite. I hope that I'll leave it there for now.
I love that. And like you pointed out there, like meeting needs that I think Ellie said something similar, like that the customer doesn't know that they necessarily have. And sometimes it's only a case of being able to create a proposition and seeing if customers like it.
Yes.
You're never going to know otherwise. I was just going to mention Susanna's comment there as well. Meg, if you could just bring that back up for us, saying I think a lot of businesses are focusing on innovation when they should be focusing on improvement, enormous efforts going into exciting innovation projects that the foundations and basics aren't quite right yet. That's a holistic problem, isn't it? Especially when it comes to starting to make massive investments in technology and data. But Alex, I'm going to come to you next. What do you think, kind of from a data point of view, as well as the Dick's Sporting Goods point of view?
Yeah, sure. So I love Susanna's comment for sure. I think that's something that our team definitely sees a lot. I think from our perspective, improvement is exactly kind of, I share the sentiment of Ellie, is like things that are already happening that we need to change a little bit and make better, as opposed to a new offering. So for example, greeting and like how we treat our customers inside of the stores. We've learned from our customers that greeting somebody whenever they walk into our stores is really important, but it's not the only thing that matters, or it's not just that greeting whenever you walk in and saying hello that really, stands out in the customer's mind. We've learned that we need to assist them throughout the experience, check up on them to see if they're okay, offer to help find products, get fitting rooms, whatever it is, and really just make that connection with our athlete, as we call them, inside of our stores. And that's an improvement to something that kind of, I think, is just very expected when you walk into a store, even if you're not someone that likes to be, sold on things and helped throughout the process. It is that kind of like human experience of just being acknowledged whenever you walk in the door. But we've learned that, in my previous lives, greeting was something that was what our customer base wanted. Just say hi to me and don't mention anything else. But we've learned that our Dick's Sporting Goods athlete really values, the knowledge that our associates have and really want that extra step and that extra help inside of our stores. So that's kind of an example of an improvement to something that kind of, was already in place. And we start measurement on our team of, okay, let's get this insight out there and start talking to people about how we might make this actionable within the stores, and then measure the improvement to that. Innovation for us looks like a couple of different things right now, and it's a really exciting time. We're thinking really a lot about in-store technology. So we have what's called Shoe Runner to us, but really it's a kiosk in our shoe section, where if you can't find somebody to help you get a shoe, or if you're just still searching around, you have this little like Android iPad looking thing, and you can scan the product and ask somebody to bring you your size, but you also could look online if we don't have in store what you're looking for. So something like that, where maybe if you're more of a self-service athlete and you kind of just want to get in and get out really quickly, or you're not sure exactly what you want, you can kind of look on there and get some additional help. So technology is a big one for us within the store experience. And then for e-commerce, which is really my world, we're starting to think a lot about personalization. So innovation in that space, where going back to what Ellie said about the like unarticulated needs or things that our customers aren't really able to tell us yet, how are we kind of taking all this data and personalizing experiences on the website based off of maybe what consumers aren't even sure that they're looking for or that they want in the online experience. So
yeah, and that critical role in data, being able to generate insights that you can't easily see by asking people through quant research. Yeah. Speaking of research, I've got Olga here, who the European Customer Consultancy has a really strong arm in research and insights as well. And obviously you work with a lot of different clients across multiple verticals. So yeah, what's your point of view on innovation and improvement?
Oh, building on what the ladies have said already, and it's great insights and great examples. I'd like to, in a typical consulting fashion, I'd like to structure it all. So what we advocate in our business is so-called customer needs system. And discovering customer needs and wants is the foundation for your improvements and your innovation. So just to give you a basic example, getting a seat on an airplane is a very basic need. Getting a clean seat is also a very basic need. And if your seats are dirty, then that's customer experience improvement. This is not something where you make money. No one's going to pay extra for a clean seat. This is expected. So 60% of organizational effort, according to the theory, should be spent on satisfying basic needs or customer experience improvements. So finding what's not working, making it work in the most cost-effective way, and freeing up employees' time from non-valued activities so that they would have the potential to innovate, the time to focus on creativity, and also that you earn the right with the customers to be innovative. Because frankly speaking, if your seats are dirty on an airplane and then you start offering hot cross buns, that's just not going to be well received. Firstly, you've got to satisfy your basic requirements in the best possible way. Within those basic requirements, you may find opportunities to delight and enhance their experience, but that is still not innovation. This is just making experiences memorable and slightly differentiated from competition. But where you make the most money is true innovation, is discovering the wants or things that aren't yet satisfied by competition. For example, this is how Argos discovered. Argos is the retailer in the UK, for those of you who are not from that region. They've, using their customer needs system, they've discovered that people want fast delivery, ideally same day. And they found a way to introduce that, and they were the first ones in the market to do that. So for a while, they enjoyed that competitive advantage. But over time, innovation becomes an expected basic need. And now everyone offers same-day delivery. Or in many countries, and Adi might relate to this example, is the child taxi. So that's quite a hassle to bring your children everywhere. And if you could have a taxi that delivers them safely, and you have the confidence in the driver and the behavior and the driving standards, then parents would be comfortable to pay premium for such drivers, given that service doesn't exist with all taxi services. So these are examples of innovation, and according to theory, again, a company should spend 25% of their organizational effort on innovation. So you might ask, so 60% on basics, 25 on innovation, where does the rest go? Very logical. So the rest goes either in relationship building, so funding those delight moments, or resolution. And this is, again, an example of a UK retailer, John Lewis. This is their model. They don't get that many complaints, and that's why they can afford to really go above and beyond in resolution, because they've got the basics right, they've got the innovation, and then they have a small number of complaints that they deal with brilliantly.
Oh, and obviously Ellie's smiling there. A few years at John Lewis yourself, wasn't it?
Yes.
In that side of the business. So moving kind of forward, and here's a question that the audience can also get involved in. Today we're talking about effectiveness. So what would you say, ladies, in order to be effective, the most important factor is when approaching CX improvement and innovation? And I just want like a one-word answer and your reason why. So like, from the heart, what comes to mind most immediately? So Alex, pick on you. What's your one word?
Selfishly, I'm gonna say data.
Yeah.
I think that's very important.
I'd be surprised if you didn't.
I think obviously as analysts, we have a responsibility to our organization to obviously socialize the data, but also make it actionable. So something that I'm really interested in addition to the data visualization and the socialization and all of that, is really seeing, what happens afterwards. So working hand in hand with our stakeholder groups to be able to be there, down the line every step of the way as to what the improvement or innovation is going to be after the insight is handed off to the team. I think that's really, really important, and honestly feel privileged to be able to kind of be along for the ride in that sense, because as analysts, we're so just like in the data all the time, and we see, what our customers are saying, and then, with that responsibility to get that information out there. I think a lot of analysts might feel like a crux of, I don't really have the responsibility afterwards to help out the organization with what might come later on. So I think it's really important to be, as the subject matter expert and as the person who's really advocating for the customer or the athlete in my case, seeing that through and really helping the teams, make some actions based on what we're telling them.
Nice, like that. Olga, how about you? One word. What's your one word?
Can I have two?
Oh, I don't know. An audience.
I'd say creativity and empowerment. If I were to elaborate on this, then I think not everything requires a budget. And by allowing people to innovate and do the right thing, we can achieve quite a lot.
Yeah, no, like that.
I'll stop there.
we've got a couple coming through in the chat as well. So Adri is saying people, particularly frontline employees, a LinkedIn user. Sorry, I can't see who your name because it's not coming up in the chat. But saying a value-driven mindset. So some quite human factors in there as well. How about you, Addy? What do you think?
One word is very difficult. One word is extremely difficult. Somewhat the LinkedIn user stole my word, which is value, because it encompasses so much, right? So you think about revenue generation, you think about the potential opportunity to improve the quality of the interactions across the organization. You think about systems improvement. As long as they all result in value, sustainable value, I'll qualify, sustainable value, then I think it's a good initiative, a good plan. I think for us in our business, in the early years, it was super like innovation, make sure there's adoption, people understand the value proposition, push. And now we're really taking time to think about how do we generate and create, first of all, incremental value with the products that people are already using on our platform, and what else do they need? What else can we support? What else can we extend ourselves to? So yeah, I guess value is my word, but I probably have 10 more to give you had you asked.
Go for Ellie.
I'm going to come full circle almost back to kind of what Alex said, and say insight. And I think in the world that I'm looking at, and it was interesting, I think it was Jennifer on the chat that said earlier about kind of the improvement versus innovation. But I think without the insight, you cannot understand the problem that you're trying to solve. And that is critical to be making sure that you're investing your efforts in the right places.
Yeah, no, that all really resonates. So again, we're here to try to give as many tips as possible. So how exactly do you go about identifying what to improve and indeed where to innovate, and really looking for examples of things you've done where you are? So Olga, I think you wanted to start with that question.
Sure. And it kind of links to the question we have in the chat as well from Adriana, saying how many companies actually can afford to spend 25% of their organizational effort on innovation. And the trick is to prioritize what you focus on. Far too many companies focus on too many things, and they don't necessarily take customer mindset or customer value into their prioritization pipeline. And so one of the things that I've done, for example, is to introduce one simple line. Anyone can do this tomorrow, is for any project governance, any project approval process, have a line that alongside budget, IT requirements, finance requirements, everything has a justification of customer value. What does this project do for the customer? And we were able to strip out quite a lot of projects that were there just because someone wanted it, put it crudely. Obviously, people wanted them for good reasons from their own functional perspective, but it's not always right for the customer to have such projects. So that's one element of a practical example of how you can start your prioritization module. More broadly, it's designing an operating model that is customer enabled. And I'm deliberately saying not customer centric, because no operating model can be just customer centric. Businesses have to make money in order to exist. So it's very debatable where the center of any business has to be. But customer enabled operating model looks at how the elements of operating model work together to deliver maximum value to the customer and to the business and to the employees and to the stakeholders. And if that, we work a lot in creating operating models for large international enterprises. And I can certify that it works if people from different departments put their heads together with a view to bring in customer enablement to the organization. And of course, we need very clear customer data. If we don't have that, and many enterprises don't, employee insights on how customer experience actually works is a good proxy for that. It's a good place to start. What I'm leading to is that you don't have to have everything perfectly laid out before you can become customer enabled. You can start with very simple things like ask your employees what needs improving. Go and observe customers and see what they're struggling with every day. Free up people's capacity to really start focusing on the customer, and then build that operating model to drive value. What I often say is that people tend to focus a lot on theoretical activities, and that is CX strategy, journey mapping, and forgive me, even customer research. But these are just foundations. Unless we act on them, they mean nothing. This is just expense. This is not investment. Investment starts happening when you start doing something with it, no matter how small. Does that answer your question? I think it's a very long-winded way of answering your question, but it's complex.
Yeah, and obviously we recorded a podcast episode the other day that's airing this week, I think, talking about exactly that, the balance of thinking about things and actually doing things, and there's definitely not enough dedicated resource, time, effort, and energy on actually creating change. So has anyone got anything to add to that, to Olga's point?
I love that. I mean, I definitely can. It really resonates in the amount of time that we spend talking about this and rewriting the plan and kind of going back and finding a little bit more insight and kind of somebody saying, oh, can you justify this point? And you absolutely get to a point in the process and go, well, let's just test it. Like let's like develop the MVP. Let's put it in front of some customers. Let's get on with the action. And rather than just staying in the ideas stage. So I totally agree with that.
Nice.
Ideas are safe, right?
Yeah. I think the only thing that I would probably add is that the approach of, or the understanding that customer value is the ultimate goal is sometimes very hard to relay to stakeholders in the business. And I think David mentioned in the comments there, trying to justify, the spend or the approach to stakeholders can be challenging. What we've done in some way, I think, because we've kind of looked at it very, black and white. What does it cost us? What is it generating us? And the important thing to do is to identify your margin of, what do I call it? Is my margin of uncomfortability, right? That threshold where I'm like, oh, we're spending too much, or it isn't giving us the result that we want. We've piloted, we've tested, we're not comfortable, let's pull back. But you have to have a system in order to have that work. You can't just jump into CX and say, oh, we're going to pilot something without a clear framework, without a clear justification, without buy-in. Because you're essentially spending money, and time equals money as well, even if it doesn't, get stated on the P&L. So it's important, as Olga mentioned, to have that system, but also that you need to maintain relationships and ensure that you've got the flexibility within your organization to influence that approach and those decisions, because you're unable to do that without that sway.
No, totally. So probably leading perfectly into me asking Alex a question around, talking about kind of business case stuff here, aren't we? And we're talking about insight being the route to being able to improve and innovate things. But from your perspective, like, how do research data and insight contribute to this issue? As an analyst yourself?
Yeah, well, I think, it's a really nice dovetail with what Addie said. I'm working on a project right now, and I don't have much to share and in terms of insight for it because I just started, but been tasked with this kind of like financial linkage of CX project. Like, it's the age-old question in CX, right? How are we going to put a dollar amount behind a point of OSAT, or a transition from a promoter to a detractor, and back and forth, and kind of what does that mean for our business in terms of dollars? And I think it's really important for us, especially in our company. Everything is so cross-functional. It's important to like open the lens of what we're talking about. So we're no longer just reporting out on satisfaction scores and net promoter score and driver scores as like the silo within the CX team, but we're really working with our customer service teams, our analytics teams that focus on, marketing or e-commerce or whatever, and trying to match up these different data points to be able to tell the holistic story of CX and move away from this kind of like measurement approach to, that tends to be, a little bit like hindsighting. Like we're thinking about things that customers have already told us in the past. How do we put these data sources together and start like anticipating needs and start getting ahead of these innovations and things that are kind of on the books for what we want to do as a company for this year and the next 2 years, and really open that lens and invite other people along for the journey. I think like the buy-in piece is extremely important, and that's been a way for our team to really get that buy-in is, bringing other people with us and saying like, we really think you can add value to this conversation. We want to do this as a team, and we know that your team also touches this thing, and how can we work together to kind of tell this more holistic story of where we want to go and where we are right now.
I love that. Amen to that as well. Like opening the lens through data. So CX isn't just being looked at as a thing. I think that's what we said in the introduction, wasn't it? CX being seen as like this silo thing that we're trying to improve continuously. Whereas we're talking about how customer experience interfaces with things like product and service and HR, and how we can widen that lens to provide holistic value. I think the really important word you used there was holistic. So Ellie, like, how do we ensure what we're improving and innovating is actually going to make a material impact to the top and bottom line? Because to Olga's point, this is the point of it, isn't it? CX is a means to an end in driving business value through taking a more customer-led approach. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I guess I've got a couple of thoughts. So I think a couple of us have talked about the kind of word value already, and understanding kind of what the customer value is that you're trying to provide, and equally kind of my point earlier around insight, identifying the problem that you're trying to solve. I think the more that you can, whether it's using kind of Olga's framework that she's already suggested, but continuously through this kind of ideation and innovation process, coming back to those pieces to constantly ask yourself, what's the problem I'm trying to solve? What customer need is this helping to contribute towards? And I also think there's definitely a piece, and whether this comes kind of as a CX team evolves and embeds within an organization, there has to become an element of trust in our process. Not every single thing that we innovate or ideate is going to succeed, but we wouldn't learn what didn't work through that process of innovation had we not tried in the first place. And how we work with our stakeholders to take them on that journey by constantly referring them back to that problem statement and saying, well, we tried this, we've learned this, and therefore kind of related to this problem statement, the next stage is X or Y, then that's the journey we have to take ourselves on. And that's a really tricky one. I mean, certainly within the supermarket and the retail industry at the moment, the bottom line, commercial is king. That's kind of the mantra sort of, historically. Whereas, should we be saying the customer is king or queen in the women in CX community? We need to constantly look at that, because ultimately, if our customer doesn't buy into the brand and what we're trying to do anymore, then they aren't going to purchase or buy into it, which is kind of the beginning of the end. So I think you have to kind of start with that insight, look at the problem statement, be able to try where possible to be looking at the kind of commercial results you're trying to push throughout that. But that should not be the be all and end all of what you're trying to do until you get a certain way through that process. But yeah, it's certainly a tricky one, and in the current economic climate and things, that's a real issue facing kind of innovative CX teams, I think.
Yeah, so we've got to kind of get the buy-in to try something, but measure more than just customer experience, the impact of whatever we're doing on multiple commercial levers to, back to Alex's point, demonstrate how it all fits together. But kind of bringing it back to Olga's point, that if we are just always creating ideas that stay on a piece of paper and we don't take the risks to try them, we're never going to actually see what the impact is. So I think that brings this really nicely together to my final question for Addy, which is really a how question. So how should we approach customer experience innovation effectively as a vehicle to deliver holistic business value? Word of the day, holistic business value.
That is such an important question. Look, I think I can only speak from my perspective, and what we've done, or at least what I've experienced over the last few years, is that you as a CX team need to understand the business like the back of your hand. You need to understand the customer base. You need to understand what are the key differentiating factors. How does one market perform compared to another? You need to know the business so that you're speaking from an informed position, right? And once you know that, you then are able to identify, okay, so what is our baseline? What do we want the interaction to look like? What should we be delivering as part of our proposition, as part of our value statement, what should we be delivering? Then look at what are you delivering? You identify the gaps, and you need to then say, okay, so now we know what the gaps are. Are there practical solutions for these gaps? Can we address them in any way? If the answer is yes, you always need to go to cost first, and cost needs to look at effort, so team capacity, as well as investment. Establish what whether you're able to prioritize that initiative for that particular time, and even if you can't and you schedule it for a later time, that's okay. You just need to know. You need to know what is important to your customers. You need to know what's broken, and you also need to think about how you fix it. But you cannot do that if you don't have a good sense of the business overall, number one, and you don't understand the triggers of what results in revenue, what results in profit, what results in a cost. You also have the accountability role for the business. So in my role, I often say, hi guys, this is what we've expected to spend for this quarter, let's say, as an example. We've actually spent 2 times more than we had budgeted for. I can account for 3 things that contribute here. But what happened? So that's a retrospective view, right? So I say to them, in next quarter, please don't do that. Let's discuss again. And so it has to be collaborative, but you cannot do so if you don't understand the mechanics of the business. You cannot only come with a customer lens and expect for the business to embrace you with your perspectives, your initiatives, your views. You have to be practical. You have to walk the walk, walk the journey, walk the intended path that you want your customer to walk, and make sure that you're prioritizing the right thing that's going to deliver the right value.
Amen to that. We had so many amens today. But yeah, absolutely. A point that seems to be quite often missed is just how critical understanding your organizational perspective, operating right environment, power, players and positions are always going to be in everything that we do. And Armin, I think also made a really great point about maybe always seeking clarity and specificity, I can't say that word, in light of pursuing any activity or project. So really defining the scope and trying to understand, like, why are we doing this, is often an underrated or almost forgotten action point. And I think Ellie said it, maybe it's Alex, but being able to go back to the problem statement that we're trying to address, or the commercial objective and outcome that we're trying to achieve through this, is something that should always be held as a cornerstone in any improvement or innovation activities. So audience, if you want to get ready to ask your questions to the audience, we've got around 10 minutes left for you to have your say and ask anything of this esteemed panel of expert women. But I'm just going to go around the room and just ask for final thoughts, really, kind of summarizing what you've said today, your perspective. What would you like to leave the audience with? And I'm going to go back to Ellie again at the top.
Yeah, I mean, I really do think there is a fine balance between kind of improvement and innovation. Both are, equally important to maintaining loyalty from your customers. And working, my piece throughout the whole of this has been, using that data, using that insight, identifying kind of and looking at what your customers are telling us, and then adapting your process to be able to kind of ideate on those. So a fine balance. Use insight to your favor, and see what you can do to make your brands even better.
Love that. Alex, your final thoughts on effective CX improvement and innovation?
Yeah, I totally agree with Ellie. I think that it's definitely a balance for sure. And I think using multiple data points, opening up that lens, and just figuring out, how we can look at things from the holistic word of the day perspective is very important as well. So I really I do want to go back to something that we talked about earlier on, about kind of like this notion of executing the basics, which I think is really, really important, and something that I want to leave as my final thought of, really, especially when we're in such a customer-facing business where everybody that is shopping with us, whether that be in store or online, is really just, like it's a personal experience for them, especially in our business. We have a lot of people shopping for children, and we're, there with them in these milestones of their life. I think it really is kind of like an underrated thing in CX to just focus a little bit on executing the basics and really understanding from a service perspective, from a transactional perspective, what people want at the same time as we're thinking about these innovations. So I can't emphasize that enough. I think it's really, really important to just, be there, think about, things that to us might seem like low-hanging fruit or something are actually some of the biggest differentiators for our customers.
And Addy, just in case, I think you just messaged me to say that your laptop is now dying because you're trying to use the last bit of generated power during load shedding. So go for it. What's your final thought?
Oh man, I was so much enjoying these answers, and I was like, oh, I want to touch on something that Ellie said and Alex said, and I'm like, oh no, it's about to die. Okay, so final thoughts. I think for me, it's really important that you look at the end-to-end kind of process, not just of customers, but your business, right? So again, going back to understanding what the value drivers are in your business, number one. Number two, understand the context in which you operate in. And I'll use an example. For us, I look after 7 countries across East, West, and South Africa. Each of the countries within West Africa, the customer behavior is so nuanced that I cannot assume that if I roll out one initiative, one product, one pilot, that they're all going to respond in the same way. I need to know that market, and I need to anticipate what they might do. And you may not always get it right. Be comfortable with the margin of error. Be comfortable with getting it wrong. Make sure that you are able to kind of get it wrong, kind of pick yourself up again and keep it moving, because that's the important bit. But also make sure that you yourself as a human being can connect the human experience to those data points that we often talk about and have to report on. Make sure that the people you're talking to, your audience, understand that that number is linked to a human being with a human experience. And that's it for me. Hopefully it doesn't die before we...
No, you didn't. You didn't. You did great. And I think just remembering that very famous phrase, you win or you learn, right? But you've got to capture the learnings. Okay. What's your final thoughts on effectiveness?
The key takeaway for me is to make improvement and innovation successful. CX needs to be integrated as a valid business contributor. So that boundary between CX and the rest of the business has to be blended. And I love it how Ellie has a role on proposition development. Traditionally, that would have sat with marketing, and CX would have been something separate to that. But because it's integrated within one role, you're bound to think from a customer-centric perspective. So I think more and more of this should be happening to enable organizations to act in the interest of their customers and themselves.
Yeah, me and Eddie are looking at each other thinking, the buying teams usually deciding what customers get in terms of service and experience. And I've lost track. Who is left to go with the final thought? Or is that everybody?
I think that's all.
That's all of us.
We're all gone. Oh, yeah. Wow. That just flew by. So yeah, I can't see any particular questions popping up. Audience, if you'd like to ask anything, we've got 6 minutes left for you to get your questions in. I guess I was just coming back to what Adri was saying around budget, being challenging for improvement and innovation a lot of the time. Obviously, speaking to hundreds of women in our community on a day-to-day basis, budgets are getting smaller. The oncoming economic impact, projects are being immediately put on hold already. The reality is we're looking at a different consumer or customer landscape that is going to change internally, how we're able to respond and what we're able to do in terms of our own jobs on a day-to-day basis. But there's a huge risk, isn't there, that if we cut things off too quickly and we don't continue to listen and research, innovate whilst these changes are happening in the external environment for customers, we're not going to be ready to respond or have anything to offer by ways of response. So a question just came up then. That was kind of my final thought, I guess, was, we've got to keep going and finding lower cost ways or doing things on a shoestring, but keeping on pushing forward. But we've got a question from a LinkedIn user. I can't see your name, sorry, because we're in a stream session behind the scenes. But do you think customer service is dying due to the increase of artificial intelligence? Who would like to ask that? Oh, Addie's shaking her head. What are your thoughts?
So my initial thought is no.
Charisse Austin. Sorry. Thanks, Meg. She let me know in the background. It's Charisse. Sorry,
Charisse.
Addie, carry on.
No, I definitely don't think that it's dying. I think that AI is a tool that we can leverage to potentially improve customer service. But customer service will always be part and parcel of what we do. Even if we're all robots talking to robots, at some point when things break, you want to be able to talk to someone. And now that talk may not be, using your voice, but there will always be a need for a party within an organization to resolve it. And AI is an enabler, not a tool to kill customer service.
Yeah, but it's how businesses implement it, isn't it? So those that have gone after cost saving before customer service have thought, we'll stick a chatbot right at the front, not teach it anything so it can actually give a valuable response. Just really frustrate customers and still end up with a high cost because people still need to be able to answer the queries. It's frustrating, isn't it, right? Because if you just took a little bit longer and you really applied it to problems that you could fix for customers and just left it doing that bit, you'd get the holistic business value that we've all been looking at. So yeah, apologies, Charisse, because we're on a backstage platform. I couldn't see your name, but Meg very helpfully let me know in our chat. But thank you, Charisse. That was a great question. Anyone else got anything to add to that one?
I think that also links to your previous comment, Claire. How can we ensure that there is enough budget for customer experience initiatives? Is that we use that power that we have to improve the business, save costs, or generate profit more wisely, like the case with AI. If it's implemented with a customer in mind, then it has got a huge potential to deflect calls, and not the right type of calls, the calls that we don't want to handle and the customer doesn't want to have. But if it's not implemented with the right understanding of the customer, or with Addie's just leaving us. So with the right understanding of the customer, then it will generate additional expense into the business. So really takes us back to the discussion that CX is a business tool.
Yeah, and being able to point ourselves towards investments that are definitely going to be made agnostic of whatever's going on, and ensuring we maximize the value out of those rather than thinking about our own things could be a route forward in being able to generate some of that buy-in, that when things get better again, we're seen as teams that add significant value to whatever strategic initiative the business has in mind. So that's all. Oh, sorry. Oh, go on.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, very, very last one. I think it kind of comes back to that solving what does the customer want from that situation? And exactly to Olga's point, there will be some times when AI is exactly the right thing that we can use to be an enabler in that situation, but there'll be others, where that human point perspective and solving that problem for you is exactly what the customer wants. So no, customer service definitely isn't dead.
Hooray for that. Woo. So that's all we've got time for, unfortunately. So I'd just like to thank you, ladies. Unfortunately, Addie's load shedding problem got the better of her battery died, but thank you to Addie as well. Thank you to everybody who came along today and watched in the audience and contributed your really valuable comments and questions. Just for anyone who is thinking about maybe joining the Women in CX community, I think Meg's just going to put a link in the chat now for you to be able to find out more. And yeah, we're super excited to see you next month, where July we're debating whether digital transformation is a problem or a solution for customer experience. See you all next time. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.